of Arknights' greatest strengths is its diversity in its setting, allowing it to explore a multitude of different styles to communicate its stories through. Lonetrail is like no other Arknights event. Its impact on the lore of the Arknights universe is tremendous, perfectly reflected by the fitting theming of the story. The mid-century was an era defined by our pursuit of the stars. The space race was in full swing, and humanity was ambitious to explore the expanse beyond our world. It is no surprise why Lonetrail chose to reflect this era of history through its heavy allusion to a style of retrofuturism. At the core of it all is Lonetrail's brilliant visual design, creating an experience that fully immerses the player.
4, 3, 2, 1. We have a liftoff.
Rhine Lab is one of the primary mediums through which Lonetrail is able to express its retrofuturistic style. Despite how much Rhine Lab looks like a modern-day tech company, the modern 21st century appearance of Rhine Lab is juxtaposed with visual aspects associated with the space race era in Lonetrail. Massive blocks of computers with CRT displays and a plethora of buttons, imitating the pictures of space-age control rooms and computer labs. An abundance of white along with muted colors, the shining polish of metal surfaces, and the white artificial lighting. These create sterile images that one would typically associate with the future, yet also evoke an unsettling feeling that humanity is becoming ever so more insignificant to the scientific advances we discover. The character design also fits the styles of the era. Well-dressed scientists and engineers in clothing with colors of the retro theming. Just look at Ferdinand, Nasty, and Kirsten together and see how much they seem like a band of NASA engineers. Also, I will point out Ferdinand's wonderful ties that are very fitting of the 60s fashion. But in my opinion, it is the enemy sprites that play most into the retro sci-fi theming. Design elements from rockets and Tesla coils, the heavy inclusion of polished metal and headwear or visors that seem to obstruct their view. And is it just me, or is there perhaps a murderous AI lurking around somewhere in them? The setting and character design of Lonetrail is already enough to create a very convincing mid-century futuristic themed event in Arknights. But beyond those two, there's another aspect about Lonetrail's visual design that sets it apart from any other event. Buckle up, this might take a while. The graphic design styles that would come to define the retrofuturistic look began during the early 20th century. At the time, the fruits of the Second Industrial Revolution brought along standardization and mass production. The old decorative styles of graphic design were seen as unable to keep up in this new industrial era. It was time for a change. One of the earliest of these art styles to reflect the new age came from Russia in the form of constructivism, where it sought to reflect the new industrial world through an industrial perspective. The ideas of constructivism would go on to spread into Western Europe and influence movements such as the Stijl in Denmark and specific schools such as Bauhaus in Germany. These styles emphasized the functionality of art. Graphics were seen objectively as materials of a final product. Elements of artworks were not drawn or painted, but assembled together. It is this rationalization of art that would become a definitive aspect of modern graphic design, one suited to the advances in science and technology, Then came the international typographic style and the Swiss style. It was these styles that would come to define the graphic design of retrofuturism. Drawing from the styles that came before it, the two would feature a few distinct characteristics from its older siblings. Utilization of grid systems to align, asymmetrical alignment of graphical elements, simple fonts, use of empty space, and a leftward alignment. It was minimalistic, sleek, and clean, a perfect style to represent the future. There are many examples of the graphic design styles of retrofuturism throughout Lonetrail. Grid systems? Check. Asymmetrical alignment of elements? Check. Use of empty space? Check. Leftward alignment? Check. Simple geometry and lines is an aspect of most retrofuturistic styles. This trend aligned with the prevalence of standardization in the manufacturing process during the era. Printing is expensive, and standardizing everything to be formed by combinations of simple shapes cuts costs. Geometric abstraction is everywhere in Lonetrail, as it heavily incorporates these principles into its graphic design, both in lore elements and in the game UI. The simple Rhine Lab Pioneer project logo, consisting of a tapering line and a curve, may be representing the tails of rockets soaring into the sky. Across many of the UIs are circles surrounded by rings, evoking the image of a celestial body with the orbits of its satellites, or a ring like Jupiter. The circle in the visual reports consists of lines of varying weight that convey the notion that it is in motion, perhaps representing a planet or a moon. Even mundane details, such as the stage icons, possess some neat graphic design. Each of them translates a complex image relating to their stages into simple geometries of lines, circles, and triangles, making them easy to read for their small size. And as for the mesmerizing grid patterns of circles scattered throughout Lonetrail, my personal hypothesis is that such is in reference to analog punch tapes and cards used for data storage in old computers. Whatever they symbolize, they certainly fit the retrofuturistic aesthetic. Color also plays a key role in contributing to the theme of retrofuturism. Styles such as the Stijl called for a simple color palette, in the Stijl's case, consisting of only the primary colors and non-colors such as white and black. Lonetrail's color palette adheres to this convention, using the primary colors and also non-colors, with the only addition of Rhine Lab's color orange. The colors in the color palette are also a distinct hue to their base colors, which emulates the colors found in old color photos and media. For the majority of UI graphics and texts, minimal colors are used, primarily being the non-colors and orange, providing the contrast for the ease of readability required for UI elements, without compromising the retrofuturistic appearance. The restrained usage of the three primary colors ties well with providing splashes of color to break up the monotony of the user interface, yet while still maintaining the professional appearance of Rhine Labs. And just throwing out another one of my personal hypotheses, but the inclusion of the primary colors in Lonetrail's design may be alluding to their role as the beginning of all colors. Words hold a great deal of power in how they affect one's perception of a design. I'm sure we can all notice when a font looks out of place within a design. When it comes to retrofuturistic styles, one font category dominates overall. Sans serifs are a type of font that do not have what is known as a serif, a small stroke usually at the end of a longer stroke of a letter. These make sans serifs cleaner and easier to read or incorporate into graphic design. The design movements of the 20th century saw a renaissance in the development of sans serifs, as the ideas of simplicity spread into typography as well, no less influenced again by the developments in technology and the need for standardization. Notable sans serif fonts developed during this time include DIN 1451 and the ubiquitous Helvetica. There is one font, however, that perfectly captures the aesthetic of retrofuturism. Futura is a geometric sans serif typeface designed in 1927 by German typeface designer Paul Renner for the Bauer Type Foundry. As a geometric sans serif, its characters are based upon simple geometric shapes, circles, squares, and triangles, making it seem precise and robotic. The strokes are near even, giving it a look of perfect uniformity. It looks less like something written by a human, but rather something created by a machine. Truly, it was as marketed, the typeface of today and tomorrow. Its association with the future of the 60s is no less in part by its utilization by NASA in the Apollo space program, from instrument panels to commemorative plaques left on the moon. And in Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, notably used in the promotional poster and in the credits. Comparing it alongside Lonetrail's distinct typeface used in many of the visual elements, it's easy to see the similarities. It does, however, feature minor differences with Futura, notably with the dots and the lowercase j. It nevertheless emulates the original design incredibly well, reflecting the ambitions, the determination, and the future Futura conveys. Lonetrail's wordmark is one of the most distinct elements of the entire event. It features geometric abstraction similarly to NASA's iconic worm logo. Now let's compare it to Dorothy's Vision's wordmark, similarly set in a science-themed event, yet with substantially different visual design. Focusing on the weight of the strokes and the spacing of the characters, you can see how these two wordmarks convey the different eras of these events. Lonetrail has much larger stroke weight, and its characters are tightly spaced together, eliminating as much empty space within the text. It presents Lonetrail's wordmark as clunky, reflecting the technology of the era. Conversely, Dorothy's wordmark has a lighter stroke weight, and characters are spaced further apart, reflecting an era distinct from Lonetrail's. The blocky design in Lonetrail's wordmark can also be found in the text for the General Investigation Dataface, with even more abstraction within its design. It's quite amazing how even simple text can contribute so much to the visual design. Out of all of Lonetrail's visual designs, there are two that I personally felt were the most profound. And they're not even connected to a retrofuturistic style. When you change the lobby background to inextinguishable, instead of the CRT display animation, you are presented with this. Gone are the Lonetrail wordmark with the rising stripes of the primary colors. Instead, you're presented with something a lot more melancholic. Darker colors, smaller graphical elements. Even though it appears to feature more graphical elements than the other animation, their design makes it difficult to distinguish them from the dark, empty void. The extremely wide spacing of the text conveys literally the sense of vastness, the vastness of space. The UI for the Pursuing of the Present stages equally evoke similar strong emotions as the title screen. Below, we can see the edges of Terra's atmosphere. Above, the vast expanse of space. The wide space, thin stroke sans serif font is the primary distinguisher for the design style, and reflects a change in the era. Gone is the vintage of retrofuturism. Instead, the beginning of a new age. The Galleria Stellaria is even smaller, emphasizing its insignificance in the grand scheme of things. Its high contrast with the surrounding color and the distancing from other graphical elements further adds to that notion. Enhancing the overall experience even more is the utilization of Morse code for the level names, evoking a cryptic feeling. An interpretation of all of these elements is that they all tie into a certain theme. Uncertainty. Uncertainty for the future of Arknights. Uncertainty for her who showed Terra the future. Dark, cold, isolated. The lone pioneer soars amongst the stars. Thank you for watching.